Now talk to me about the lesbian movement that emerges in the early part of the 1960s, and its relationship to the feminist movement in general.
Well, it's really so interesting. At John Jay, we just gave the first Audre Lorde Prize for Social Justice to the GLBTQ community, which is very large at John Jay, which is very interesting because Audrey and I team taught the first, it was called American Women in Black and White in the maybe it was 69 or 70. I think it was about 70, when our students were all police officers and mostly white, and we were in the closet. We posed as divorced women. Well, we were divorced women, but that's not all we were. And to give in the year 2016 the first Audre Lorde Prize for social justice to a very gay-friendly faculty member who supports our gay students, and to a trans student who is a great activist for trans rights, was really a thrill. It was really just, Audrey would have been so pleased because, this mother, feminist, warrior, poet, hero, leader, we're out. And this is the 40th anniversary of something called the Center for Lesbian and Gay Studies. And we had our first meeting at John Jay 40 years ago when there was a bomb scare. And so all of us who were at this meeting, Marty Duberman was the chair, were out on the street because there was a bomb scare. And this was during the weekend. And Monday morning, the next week, the president of John Jay, Don Riddle, and I happened to be in the elevator together, and he said, "I hear you had a great meeting." And so, okay, I was out of the closet 40 years ago. But it was very slow. The closet really existed for a very long time. And the course that we taught, which was to the students, all of whom were police officers and firefighters and men, very quickly the women in the bars in page 3 and the C colony heard that we were teaching, and they invaded our class, and then very quickly the police students brought their wives and their mothers and their sisters and their friends, and it was the most crowded classroom imaginable, and we had a lot of fun. But we were still, slowly coming out of the closet. It was very slow.
Tell us then, I'm thinking about the coming out of the closet as a political act. So tell us what influence that had, or how it shaped the way
it's really sort of astonishing when you think of how far we've come, and then you look at the backlash, which is a little bit like Roe v. Wade, how far we've come, but look at the backlash.
Right.
So here we've come very far, and we can get married, and Claire and I, we've been together for 46 years, and we're married. Imagine that. Bottom line, Audrey had a great line in one of her poems, "Your silence will not protect you." And that notion that your silence will not protect you was very important. At some point, be bold is a great message. I tell my students to be bold and to write from their hearts. That's how you write. How do you write? You write from your heart.
Right.
Okay? And you write love letters to your readers. Be bold.
Why does passionate politics come to mind
Charlotte
when you're
Bunch? Yes. Charlotte Bunch's Passionate Politics has to come to mind because she was one of our global heroes. Women's rights are human rights. And Charlotte Bunch was really one of the great organizers of the various global meetings for gender justice. And she was one of the leaders of an organization called the Furies, which was based in Washington, D.C., but the Furies had, there was this newspaper, the Furies. So there were small papers in which people started to come out, and Jeb, the great photographer, started to take photographs of, and then Judy Grawn and Audre Lorde started to write like dykes And there we were. We had a literature, we had magazines to read, and we had each other to love. It was a movement. And it is
it's
still
a movement. And it's a movement that's integrated. You know, it has tentacles, if you like, into the broader social justice movement. So that's part of what makes this idea of women's work so intriguing, because here is a group of women with a particular kind of identity who nevertheless, to achieve justice for themselves, if you like, ends up both producing and working for justice for the world, or
everybody.
For human rights.
Right. Well,
everywhere.
I mean, if you're pursuing justice, you're pursuing justice for everybody. I mean, this notion that we can, you know, the notion that we can't get over our divides, bridge our divides, that's what the movement has to do. That's what the women's movement did. That's what the civil rights movement did. You know, we just have to transcend and bridge the divides. And ultimately, you know, one of the heroes that endures is Wendell Willkie, who goes around the world in 1942, and he has an epiphany. Everything that happens anywhere impacts on everybody everywhere. We are one world. And that, he wrote that book in 1942. FDR said, why don't we run together and have a new progressive party, you and me? And Wendell Willkie considered it. But Wendell Willkie was a man who ate too much, drank too much, loved too much, and dropped dead very suddenly of too much. And so it didn't happen. But his book, One World, is still the message for the future.
That's a great note to end on, but I don't want to end there. I want to back up for 1 minute and talk about this combination of civil rights, women's rights, and I especially want to talk about it through the eyes of Florence Kennedy, Flo Kennedy. Tell us about her and how she brings these movements together.
Well, Flo Kennedy was one of the most amazing attorneys, a black attorney, who was also a broadcaster. She had her own television show, her own radio show. She was a very radical attorney. And she traveled a lot with Gloria Steinem, so that when they were building the feminist movement, she and Gloria would go all over the country for feminism. She also traveled with me for the peace movement, and she was really, really very funny. Her quips were amazing.
Before we get to the funny part, get to the serious part.
Well, the serious part was...
What was she saying when she
Well, she was saying, we are all in this together. Organize. You know, get out of your kitchen, get out of your living room, get out beyond the television, get out and march. We need to be marching. We need to be shoulder to shoulder.
For what?
Justice. For civil rights, for women's rights, for human rights. And that was, you know, empty the prisons, we need education for everybody. She was really one of the people who just said, what is this prison stuff? We need help. People in prison need help. They need counseling. They need jobs. They need to be educated, to be able to be self-supporting and contributing. And so she had this really big vision. Everybody needs to contribute. Everybody needs to be safe. And that was Flo Kennedy.
And now tell us the quips.
Well, the one quip was, if men got pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament. That was one of her funny quips.
Wonderful. So civil rights and the women's movement moving hand in hand into the 1970s. But then along comes Black Power, along comes a kind of split on the part of both extremes. some elements of the women's movement separate and argue for what we now call liberal feminism, or, participation in the goodies that the earth has to give. And some elements of the Black movement argue that women really are and should be within the African American movement subordinate to Black leadership.
Well, some of us didn't play those divisive games. So I think of Angela Davis and the Black Power movement, when the Black Power movement becomes the Black Panthers. And then there are friends of the Black Panthers. And then there's Angela Davis, who is really one of our abiding heroes, and the bridge there. As a matter of fact, it was Angela Davis who got an Audre Lorde chair at the University of Kentucky in Louisville, organized it for, Audre Lorde. So Angela Davis, there were always people who wanted to keep the big bridge. And fought for the big bridge. And I have to say, I think Amy Swerdlow, I think those of us in our study group, we have to think about socialism. Can't we think about socialism? How do we think about socialism? Not male-dominated, Soviet-dominating socialism, but, Emma Goldman, anarchism, power from the bottom up. At some point, we have to think very big and very radical and keep our movements clear. So, and I think that continued with Audre. There's a new book, The Wind is Spirit, that Gloria Joseph just did, in which Audre, who built bridges globally. So there's an Afro-German feminist movement of radical women that when Audre was in Berlin getting alternative health care, she was part of that, creating this Afro-German movement. And there's a wonderful film that Dagmar Schultz has done, Audre the Berlin Years, which anybody can get on YouTube. Thrilling, really. And this continues. So that Claire Koss, my partner, who did a book on poetry, is a playwright. Her play on Emmett Till has been translated into German and is going to be in Berlin next year. The civil rights movement, white responsibility, white silence. We have to stop the violence. These are the big issues. They're not going away, unfortunately. One can argue they're getting worse. We have a fascist, big mouth, running for president. That's very scary. This is new in America, but it's not new in the world. And the battles are old. We have to keep the struggle on. As Annette Rubinstein, my personal hero, always said, life is about the struggle.